Call to order the March 13th meeting of the Conestoga Valley Board of School Directors. Please join me with the pledge of the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a
the presenter instead of Mr. Peters, as was originally posted.
Okay, thank you. Are there any others? If not, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as corrected?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays or abstention? If not, the agenda is approved. We will move on to superintendent's comments.
Just a short one tonight, Madam President. I just want to put a shout out to all the teachers and students as a part of encouragement, because March is one of the dips when it comes to education. There's a lot of work being done, and there's not a lot of breaks until you get through March. So hang in there, students, hang in there, teachers. November and March are your two down months. You'll make it. Just keep fighting a good fight and doing what you have to do.
And remember, it's getting you closer to the end of the year.
We're getting there. But they're doing a great job. So kudos to all educators and students.
Absolutely. Board comments. Any board members have comments on district activity? Yes.
Can I talk about this morning?
You can talk about whatever you'd like.
Okay, I did go to the legislative breakfast this morning with Dr. Z, with Odette, and with Dr. Kosha. And I think we came away very hopeful that the legislators heard us, see the things that need to be taken care of, the charter school thing. Dr. Troop from Ephrata said they are overpaying $1.3 million for the charter schools for their students. Overpaying. Teacher retention, etc. Feels like we got their attention. Also, the legislators would like to visit our schools. And our schools, and I know Dr. Kosher knows this, and Dawn for the high school. Our representatives are Steve Mentzer and Keith Greiner, who does live in our district. Our senators are Scott Martin and Ryan Ahmet. And they would love to do tours, whatever. And,
I'm glad you came away with an optimistic attitude. I was a little bit less so, but
okay.
I think one of the messages we got is they expect more advocacy of us than they get, so maybe we need to up our game a little bit, even to the point of being a nuisance if necessary. Anything else? If not,
Madam President, if you could note that Mr. Benigno is present now.
I guess I can mention two things from Leola Elementary that were district activities, because I don't think we had a meeting since we had the Princess Ball, which was, I was dragged there by a very excited kindergartner myself, but the turnout was awesome. It was just a room full of lots of energy. And I imagine the cleanup of all that popcorn must have been quite extensive. And then also the, what was the one they just had?
Night of the Arts.
Yeah, Night of the Arts. I was gonna say back to school night, but that's previous. So Night of the Arts. It's just cool to see the things they're adding to it with some art stuff that was happening in the gym. My whole family was sick last week, so we didn't get to attend, but we did go and pick up the pizza that I paid for. 'Cause that so I got to stop in quickly and get the pizza and kind of see some stuff and see all the kids lined up in the cafeteria to play little recitals with their instruments, which was also really neat. So just a lot of cool things happening there. It's neat to see the community really coming out for a lot of the events that are happening. That's really encouraging.
Anything else? If not, we will move on to public comments. This is the point in the agenda where if anyone in the public would like to make comments on an agenda item, this would be your opportunity. If not, then we will move on to the high school report. Would you like to introduce them, Dr. Z?
I would love to. What I'm gonna do is introduce Sean Carley. And Sean is the Valley Heat dance team coach. And he's gonna introduce the program that we have going on at the high school. It's been going on now 3 years, 4 years?
This will be year four.
Year 4, awesome.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Z, for that introduction. As he said, I am Sean Carley, and I am the advisor for the Valley Heat Step Team. And I have with me here tonight 3 of my team members. I have my captain, Jalissa Rivera, and 2 of my members, Esther Malari and Lyra Hernandez.
And we are almost there.
While you're getting that up, let me tell you a little bit about STEP. So stepping is a rising art form and an important part of America's artistic and cultural heritage. In stepping, the body is used as an instrument to create intricate rhythms and sounds through a combination of footsteps, claps, and the spoken word. You can move to the next slide. All right, so Jalissa is going to talk to you about some of our team members.
So we have 8 team members. We have Bajetta Damal on the left, and then Laura Perez, me, and Harmony Cole. The other 3 girls have joined this year. I have joined my freshman year, so this will be my 3rd year, and with an additional year of me starting a group with friends in my 8th grade year.
I'm Esther. I joined last year. I was also on the middle school team with my captain, Jalissa.
I'm Lyra. I joined this year along with Jara Cirillo and Melody Martinez.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the team history. So 4 years ago, a former student whom you can see in the picture on the screen, Sayez Coleman, came to me and asked if I would be the advisor for a new club, the STEP team. I actually didn't know what STEP was. I have to plead my ignorance here. So I had to do some research and find out what it was, but it's popular in fraternities and sororities across the country, and it has its origins in African culture. And Sayez wanted to bring that to Conestoga Valley. So after doing some research, I agreed to be the advisor. And for that first year, basically, it was just a learning curve for me, just learning how to do it, what it was, how to look for what is good stepping, and how to help the students improve upon it. So if we could play this video, it's going to talk to you about the history of why the STEP team was created.
tremendous like level of confidence, not in an arrogant way at all, but just not afraid to be who she was even when other people didn't get it or appreciate it or respect it.
I kind of started a step team because I wanted to get a lot of different feelings for people, and most of the minority kids here at CV are kind of isolated. So I kind of started to get more people involved with it, trying to see how many kids I can connect. So I was like, let me start a step team, let me see how everybody's feeling about it. A lot of kids were like, yeah, that'd be so cool, we never had nothing like that before. I really would like to try it, so I started it to kind of connect everybody back together. Cultural relevance to me is a very big deal. It's understandable when people don't like get what you're trying to say about your culture or understand it completely, but it's like the fact that I want more people to at least get why we're doing this and why it matters to the person. It doesn't always have to be you understand the whole problem and all that, but you at least have to know why that person is doing it. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, you can be a part of anything. Anyone can do it, and I don't know, I think it's good that our school is doing this because it brings everyone together.
When my daughter decided to start it, her goal was just to bring something to CV that is influenced by the African American culture. And to teach that and to give that to the school as a whole, especially by involving students from all ethnicities in the club. She spent a lot of time developing and learning even more about her desire to do and give back to the school, since that is one of the principles or things that they're taught in Atalo is to give back. And starting the STEP team was kind of her way of giving back to CV as well as to herself.
That's the end of that video. That year, actually, we had the opportunity to perform in front of Magic Johnson for the Atalo dinner. So we had a little bit of trouble kind of keeping our numbers up during COVID. As you can imagine, we lost a lot of team members based on, students afraid to be in close proximity with each other. So we've been slowly rebuilding the team. Esther's going to talk to you about some of the activities that we're involved in.
We usually do the Christmas Addicts. We go there and perform. We do the pep rallies and the basketball game as well, and some other stuff like the talent shows too.
So this next slide is going to show you a few videos here from the Christmas Addicts competition. The first one on the left, as you can tell by the date, February 2020, is right before COVID happened. And this video is from our second place winning competition. Just a short clip from it. So I was very proud of them that night. That performance was one of their most synchronized that I had seen them do up to that point. So fast forward to just this past month, actually just a few weeks ago. Before you play that, Dr. Z, could you talk a little bit about that performance, Lyra?
This is our most recent performance. We did a presentation with R.M. Harris. She read her poem called Black Woman, and we won 3rd place, and it was fun. It was new for me because it was my first performance, and it was a good experience.
You can just play it for the first few seconds, it's fine. So this will give you an idea of our current team. The other videos were of our past teams, but this is who's on the team right now. Okay, you can stop it there, that's fine. So this was our poet, R.M. Harris. She's actually the aunt of one of our team members, Harmony Cole, who couldn't be here tonight. At the beginning of the school year, I had wanted to do something different with STEP, something we hadn't done before, and I haven't really seen it done much. I actually scoured the internet, scoured YouTube for poems done to STEP, and I was only able to find one. So I felt it was a niche that we could sort of fill. So I brought this up to the team, and one of our members, Harmony Cole, said that her aunt was a poet, so it all sort of fell into our lap, and she agreed to come in and help us out and recite her poem, Black Woman. It was Black History Month competition, so it was a very appropriate poem for the occasion. And so we worked together as an entire team, and we choreographed the entire poem with a step routine. So it was a very interesting experience, and it definitely was a team effort because everybody had input into the final product.
Keep going, or next slide?
Next slide, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I was going to show you this, but for the sake of time, we'll go past this. But this was a talent show performance that we had done, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I like it just because we had done it to music, and we usually don't do it to music. So Jalissa's going to talk to you about what STEP means to us.
So STEP is important to us because it provides a safe place. Everyone feels welcome. There's no judgment, and it's a second family to all of us. We feel that we belong to CV culture, and we can express our creativity, and it's fun. Any questions?
I noticed in your earlier one, there were a couple of males and females. Where are you now with that?
We're trying. It's really hard, but yeah. Most of those boys they've already graduated, so.
Oh, okay.
Is this something you think you guys will want to try to do if you go on to college as well? Because I know a lot of universities are getting STEP teams, or have had them now for a while, which is really cool. That's awesome.
In fact, wasn't the latest competition you did, there were some collegiate teams? And how did you stack up against those? Pretty well, from my understanding.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, they held their own.
They did.
May I ask what you usually do with your days other than STEP?
What's that? I'm sorry?
May I ask what your usual position is?
He's an English teacher.
Oh, yes, I'm an English teacher. Yeah, sorry.
I was trying to make a connection if you either said music or art or something, but very good.
I thought she was asking position like during practice. Practicing with them or something.
No.
I was thinking like, yeah.
Do you participate at all?
I do, yes.
Oh, you should have brought us that.
He does a very great job.
Yes.
Is he good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're being very kind to me right now.
Great. So you do this all school year, or,
Mhm.
and how often do you get together?
Every Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Twice a week.
We like more, but it's hard with everybody getting rides, cause the girls who can't get rides goes to the activity bus. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if we run the activity bus more often, you can practice more often.
Yeah.
And they like when they can get on the stage when the musical's not going on or so forth, like, the one day they wanted the lights as bright as they could be, I was like, you guys are gonna be sweating, they're like, no, leave the lights on. There were so many lights on you couldn't even see.
Do you have need to do fundraising?
We actually can't do fundraising unless we go through the proper channel, which we would have to become, and forgive me, I don't know the right terminology, but we would have to take minutes for every one of our meetings. There's a, Marilyn would know, entire procedure that you have to go through.
You need to qualify for the competitions and all.
Well, no, just to do fundraising, you have
Oh.
to take minutes for every time you meet and have an official list of club members and a secretary and a president and all those official titles, which we haven't taken that step.
Do you have expenses?
We do.
We found some creative ways to cover those expenses.
Does it involve a mask or a bank, does it?
Not from my end.
I don't know what creative ways to raise money are, but I'll leave it at that.
In the past, we have had gracious parents who were able to do printing of
Oh, okay.
t-shirts that donated entire uniforms to us. We've been fortunate in that regard.
At the CV community.
That's correct.
Thank you for coming, girls. This was.
Thank you.
At least they didn't ask us to get up and join them.
Mark would have been my,
first
I'd literally have my steps in for today, I'm good. That would be awful for me.
Well, now we're gonna get a little bit more serious, aren't we?
Oh, as I look behind me, yes, now we're serious.
Look, I'm letting you wear your shawl, don't rub me the wrong
I
way.
sent you an email.
You are. Oh, did you?
I did.
Ooh. And what they say, don't get angry, get even.
Make you laugh.
You think?
Maybe, I don't know. All right. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk with you a little bit about the progress that we've made thus far on our positive behavior interventions and supports. So we have a district status report to just give you an update on all the work that has happened across the district since we started to undertake this process this summer. So there was a presentation that you all had access to, so you can always go back to it. There's some links there as well in the presentation that you can access yourself on your own time. I wasn't going to go through them. So I'm going to start out with explaining some of our key personnel and then go through some of the strategies and the implementation steps that we have. So that first slide, I put some acronyms up here for you, which it's kind of education speak as normal. Everything has an acronym. So when we talk about PBIS, that is our positive behavior intervention and support. When we talk about BLT, that's our building leadership team. When we talk about our DLTs, that's our district leadership team. We talk about SPEC, that's our Supporting Positive Environments for Children, and that's the company that we put a contract together to consult with. They're called SPEC. And then PAPBS, that's the Pennsylvania Positive Behavior Support Network that we are a member of now. And so you'll see those terms interspersed throughout this presentation. So for our key personnel, my name is up there as the district PBIS coordinator, and then we also have two coaches. We have an elementary district coach, Ms. Dawn Cabry, and she is also our SET specialist, if you remember us talking about her earlier in the school year. So she is our district coach at the elementary for PBIS, and then Ms. Michelle Pletcher is our secondary district coach, and she's also the RTII coordinator at the high school. So they all coincide. You can see how trauma and restorative practices and behavior and MTSS and RTII kind of all coalesce together. So that's our district lead team. And then we have our SPEC consultants, which include Mr. Tyler Hoffman and Ms. Joelle Jones. Tyler is our personal lead consultant, and then Joelle assists as she's able to. We meet a lot. The district coaches and Tyler and Joelle probably meet upwards of 4 to 5 times a week. And then as a district team, we meet sometimes two to 3 times a week, and we're getting into that level now. So the next slide is how we have implemented.
Quick question.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I'm looking back at the cheat sheet of acronyms, and excuse my ignorance, I'm not seeing RTII on there.
Yeah, so that does not necessarily have anything to do with PBIS.
Okay.
Okay, so we've moved out of the RTII use of terminology, and we've moved into MTSS. So that's what we talk a lot about with you over the past couple of months.
Response to intervention.
Which is, so MTSS is the multi-tiered levels of support. And when people talk about the academic side of multi-tiered systems of support, they typically refer to RTII.
Okay.
Okay, which is the academic portion of that. The behavior portion of that is PBIS. So when we talk about that umbrella of support services, PBIS falls underneath that umbrella for the behavior side.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Response to intervention and instruction.
Yes. Thanks, Steve. All right, so our implementation strategies, when you're putting a system together, you have to have multiple levels of working through in order to plan and figure out what you need and then ultimately implement that. So we have an exploration, an installation stage, an initial implementation stage, and then finally the full implementation stage. So we began this back in the summer of 2022, where we began to explore what we needed to do. We knew that we needed to get to that initial step of PBIS to figure out, are we going to do this and how are we going to do this? There were a lot of pieces that were happening across the district in different buildings, but they weren't unified and they weren't comprehensive across all the buildings. So you'd go into one building and you'd see flavors of PBIS, you'd go into another building and you would have a whole different flavor of PBIS. So we started exploring what we needed to do, and we began to talk with, we were looking at our CV comprehensive plan. So again, going back to MTSS, of course that aligns directly with that, so we wanted to make sure that we were aligned with the comprehensive plan. We also wanted to see who we had across the district to be able to lead this. So we settled on myself, and like I said, Dawn Cabry, who is our SET specialist, and then also our secondary lead, which is Michelle Pletcher, who has that expertise in that RTII and MTSS piece. So we had the capacity. We knew that our principals across the district were already doing flavors of it, so we knew that the principals were ready as well. We then started talking about, could we do this ourselves? And that's when we came to you and said, we can't necessarily do this ourselves. We need someone to be able to help us through this, and that's where we talked to SPEC. And they are honestly a godsend. They are, it's a company that is able to really understand the organization of a school and give us a complete framework to help us through the initial exploration, installation, and implementation strategy. So they give us the tools and they lead us through it, and it makes it so much better for all of us. Then we moved into the installation phase, in which we identified the people that I just mentioned, and we began training, and we started doing a lot of work together as a team. SPEC was meeting with us. We were meeting multiple times a week, and then we started building that out to the building. So then we started identifying who our building level training team members were going to be, and how are we going to meet with them. How are we going to do our district leadership team meetings? And then how are we going to debrief with everyone across the district to be keeping everybody in the loop in all levels that we were kind of working through? So we have our district leadership team, and that takes, it's a pretty big group. We fill up this entire area here, and we meet monthly. We have a broad group of stakeholders, so we have all of our district leads, we have our principals, we have our coaches. I think Michelle's back there. Michelle is one of those stakeholders that participates in that group, and then during that process, we did a lot of baseline data collection, and we found out what we needed to do to implement. So what we needed to do is we needed to identify what were we missing, and once we found out what we were missing, then we start plugging that holes for training. So there's some data in the back, further down, that I'll show you.
I'm going to interrupt you. All of these people that are involved, are they basically volunteering because they wanted a system like this in place? Impressive.
We asked, and they came. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. And so when we talk about data, PBIS has data. That's what it is. It's focused completely on data and not just figuring out what behaviors that we need to work with, but just getting the program into place has data involved. So we needed to figure out what kind of implementation areas we needed to look at. And this is just an example. It's nothing that you have to, this isn't going to give you any information. It just gives you an understanding on when spec comes to us, they just don't give us a framework. They identify what we really need help with. And so these areas, you can see that some of them are completely down at zero. We didn't have any capacity for that. We didn't have any understanding for that. So we know that we have to focus on those areas with the zero. They have a 1.2 on leadership training. We knew that our leadership group, our principals, already had a lot of understanding on PBIS, and that's what I was talking about. The flavors were there, we just needed to unify it. So that's just an example of something that we saw that our principals are ready for it. We had some other areas that we need to start, focusing on a little bit more for implementation. So then we get into some surveys. So like I said, more data collection. So what we're working towards is we're looking at what we want to do for what we expect for expectations and behavior. And what we've settled across the district on three areas. And these are the words you're going to hear over and over again when we talk about positive behavior systems. We're identifying three areas. We want kids to be safe, we want them to be responsible, and we want them to be respectful. And that's what PBIS is. Okay, so that's the focus, that's the goal for this. So we've aligned it with the profile of the CV learner and character strong. And then we started branching out to how are we going to, now we had our district group going. We had our idea, we had our safe, respectable, responsible. Now we need to get to the building tier 1 leadership team. So we needed to build into our BLTs. So now we have our building coaches identified in each of the buildings. We have team membership in each of the buildings. And now we are starting to do the training modules, which includes 6 training modules. So all these people are going through training to learn how to do this PBIS system. And the district coaches are then going in and then adding more support to that. So they're not just given a model and say, go for it. It has a lot of support on the back end too, which is all expected to bring us to when we start to do the implementation phase, which is the practice of it in the fall of 23-24. To let you know, we are now a member of PBS, and what that means is each principal had to sign an agreement, basically, that they were in agreement with all the functions of PBIS, which is that your school is going to, follow along with the methods of it, the data collection, the assessment, making use of your data teams. And when you're a part of PBS, you have a lot of access to your national and your state level resources. So they provide, again, more support on the back end for us. Can keep going. So what we're working on right now are I don't know if you're aware, but the school has a code of conduct. The district has a code of conduct, and we're talking about what behaviors you expect. And so what we're working on right now is we're doing revisions to the code of conduct, which reflects an alignment to PBIS. And when I say an alignment with PBIS, we're talking about how do we measure behavior so we're able to see behavior change. And so when we look at a code of conduct, we're going to be trying to identify minor behavior and major behavior, because it all has to do with how we code things, and then it has to do with how we report things, and it's how we measure things. So when we have our code of conduct, it ends up being in our handbook. And so we have a code of conduct now. It's going to look basically the same, except we're going to be aligning that to how we measure PBIS. So we have to give numbers to things, basically. So we're able to measure it in a different way. So we're starting that with our administration teams this week or next week. I can't remember right now offhand. Do you remember, Michelle? Next week. Thank you, Michelle. We're going to be having our code of conduct beginning with administration review next week with elementary, and then secondary will follow that. And we're going to, exciting part about this is that we're going to put it into Power School. So Power School has the platform to be able to use PBIS and gather that data, and to be able to provide the framework for us to be able to use that data to work for behavior change. So all of that was what we have been doing all year. And that's what we're going to continue to keep doing. What's going to change, though, in the fall is we're going to start practicing it. So in the fall, then we start doing some professional development with the staff as a whole. And we start talking about teaching expectations. So we're talking back to that safe, responsible, respectable. We're talking about the code of conduct. We're acknowledging students for making great choices. We're talking about correcting behavior errors when they make a mistake. We're talking about strategies and how we get assistance for when those behaviors errors happen. And then there's going to be a student orientation because they're gonna learn all about those flavors of PBIS, and they're going to see that safe, respectful, and responsible. They're going to see that they get CV bucks. They're going to see those positive rewards for making good choices. When they make a behavior error, they're going to have a fix to it. There's going to be something to come back from. They're going to see celebrations, but they're also going to know that there are consequences too. There's also a family orientation that we're going to do in the fall, in which we're going to have open houses to talk about what PBIS looks like. And like I said, we're going to brand it, and in some places we're going to rebrand it because we have had flavors of it. So we're going to turn it into a full CV-wide brand of PBIS. So we'll get information out to everyone about that. And then going into the fall, we're going to continue all of our team meetings, which includes all of our building level meetings, our district level meetings, and then within the buildings, they're going to be adding their data review, they're going to do action planning, and they're going to work on that tier 1 implementation, which is everyone gets support. It's not just for individual students. We're working on everyone's positive behavior.
That was going to be my question, because that's what usually we talk about individual students.
When we talk about tier 1, this is for everybody. Everybody's expected to adhere to the code of conduct. Everyone is expected to show positive behavior. Everyone is expected to do certain things. And so when we have PBIS across the district, we have that safe, respectful, and responsible piece. They start to learn that those words. They start to see what the celebrations happen for making good choices. And we know that it's across the board for every single student. When we start talking about tier 2, tier 3, that's when things may not be working for certain, kids, and we need to do a little bit more intervention or do something in a different way. When we're talking about where we are right now, we're at the tier 1. That means we're working with every single student in the same expectations.
So to get that cohesion across all the elementary schools, I think somebody touched on this last time. And I appreciate that the schools are talking to themselves, even like the CV Bucks thing and some of that stuff, to support those good behaviors so that every student has a similar experience in all the schools. So that's part of that, I'm assuming?
Yes, yeah. We want to make sure that when one student moves from one school to the next, that they have the same flavor. It should all be the same, that they know what they're earning, they know how they earn it, and they get the same piece.
We talk about the 3 stages of tier 1, staff development, student, and then founders.
Mm-hmm.
You'll forgive my being a little jaded here. How are you going to bring the founders in? That's often difficult. Do you have a special plan we don't know about?
Well, I'm going to reflect on what happened at Leola this past 2 months. I don't have quite exact data, but I think the amount of parents that came to a reading night jumped from maybe 50 to over 300.
Wow.
Yeah. I think when people start to feel that there's an opportunity for something different, or they feel a different way about things, that they want to be a part of it.
And you're curious as to what they might like or dislike about that, and they want to verify.
And they came, and
that program
were pizza.
That program is based on what topic?
The Title I Reading and Math Night. So it was literacy and math.
Yeah.
Yep, they had games in different classrooms, activities. It was very much, it wasn't a sit and get presentation. Mr. Gensel was there. It's was just active, you're engaged with your child. We provided the dinner, we took that stress off.
It's as much an activity night as it was anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So
and
that
also with our play and learns as well, we're finding that same structure is just the informal, welcoming, lots of staff there to greet you, some snacks, food, again, that's a big thing off of families' minds, to not have to worry about figuring out their meal plans and try to get everybody to school. So we've seen a lot of success in those areas.
Very good, very creative.
So we're gonna try to repeat that.
Do we know of any other districts that have gone through this full implementation
Yes.
and their system is mature enough that they have data that shows how it's working now versus how it
Yeah.
did in the past?
And a great resource for that is the Pennsylvania
Yeah.
group, PAPBS. The data is very, very significant for districts that use PBIS with a lot of fidelity.
Mhm.
They follow the rules, they do exactly what they're supposed to be doing in terms of their positive rewards and their code of conduct pieces. They follow it. The data is very, very clear that behavior improves drastically. And so when you do get on that site, you're able to see districts that have been using implementation in PBIS for 15 years or so. And so there's a lot of data that's out there to be able to see why it works.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And do we have any resources that could give us tips in terms of, if I had to do it all over again, I would do something this way rather
Yeah.
than the way we did it? Just so we're not reinventing the wheel
Mhm.
in our implementation and are learning from others.
Tyler with Spec is that resource.
Okay.
He's our direct resource to be able to tell us what's the right way to do it.
Okay.
And he's tied in directly to the state organization, and he has supported a number of districts through this, and he also just is involved in the research out there. Michelle also, Pletcher, our secondary coach, she presented at the state conference this past fall. So she also knows people in the PBIS community to know, what works, what doesn't, don't do this, don't start this way. So there's a benefit for us right now that we're a little late, but we're there now, and we have opportunity to learn from people that have already gone through it.
Cheapest lessons to learn are from other people's mistakes,
Yes.
always.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. Does this seem to, I know we're only at tier 1 right now, but does this seem to be nearly as effective when a child starts this, say, 3rd or 4th grade as opposed to starting in kindergarten or first?
That's a great question, because we asked Tyler
I
that.
think great answer.
We asked Tyler that, how that implementation works for the kids that are coming in. They're gonna learn it from kindergarten on versus that 3rd and 4th grade. And he shared data with us that the behavior change doesn't matter when you start. It actually is the act of doing the PBIS that starts behavior change. It's not how long you've received it for. It's just starting it.
And there's a way to orient a child that would have been here when it started in kindergarten, but didn't come to CV until 3rd or 4th grade. So its classmates are already acclimated to it, and is there an adaptation for them too?
I would assume so, that if you're coming midway through the year, that there's probably going to be an you're acclimatizing to everything, the rules of the classroom to, what the culture of the school is like. So yeah, it's part of that.
An inevitable question, what costs are involved in this program? Do we pay membership dues? Do we pay for Tyler?
Tyler, we did have a contract for. We Essers.
Yep.
We paid for it through
approved the
Essers.
spec contract August or September, I wanna
August.
say.
It was
We
August.
have so many of them.
Yes.
I don't necessarily
Yes.
remember that
Yes,
contract.
it was an Essers contract.
But we'll be bringing next year's pretty soon as well.
So we pay for it with Esser's funds.
Mhm.
But going forward, we can't continue.
We'll be a functioning team. So
You won't need
we
that.
won't need him anymore.
Do we pay a membership dues to the Pennsylvania group just to belong and have access?
No, we just need to follow the rules and do the program
And
with
they're
fidelity,
sponsored
and we need to
elsewhere
collect data, and we need to share it with them so they're able to see what we're doing, because if you're able to share data together, then it's more robust with figuring out what
So are
works
they
and what
more
doesn't
like a
work.
nonprofit type
Mhm.
of, oh, okay.
Yep.
Sounds great, I'll be anxious to see what kind of data we generate.
Yeah.
After that first year.
Just two. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, thank you. is that all the questions you had for these people, just to make sure we're all finished with them? Okay. Mrs. Hunsinger, you're going to go over Plan Con H, which is just fascinating.
Oh, it is. It might take about 2 hours to get through it all. So this is Plan Con number H in the series, and in case inquiring minds want to know, we go all the way up to Plan Con K. We don't intend to, but anyhow, what we have to do, and this is for the new Smoketown Elementary School, we are required to submit this form to PDE to notify them of how we are funding the construction project. So if you happen to glance at this, we're using some of the funds from the bond issue that we floated in 2021. And then when those proceeds run out, we're going to be using some of the bond proceeds from the 2022 issuance. I can't make it any longer.
Any questions? We've been through this a couple of
Oh,
times.
yeah,
The
and we'll
traditional
have more for you
forms,
soon.
Even though they don't give us any money to help us, they want to know what we're doing with our own money.
Exactly, yes. You never know. So if we can just roll this to next week's consent agenda, that'd be great. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Z, you have things here on the budget
I
review.
do, and the IU presented a nice overview of everything that's going on over there. They are very good at what they do, and this is only a small percentage of their budget. It is about 5% of
No, I know.
their entire budget. And our increase is nominal. In fact, I think we have a decrease this year. Let me double check the last handout.
Yeah, 13.
Sorry about that, I had it.
Yeah, we go from 43.6 to, we went from 43.7 to 43.6. Not a lot, but it's a decrease.
But it's a decrease.
Yes, absolutely.
But again, it just helps for the products that we have. Now, it doesn't include when we pay for students to go somewhere, to go to the IU. That's on a per pupil cost. So they don't charge the districts a flat $100,000 and whatever you send. It's actually how many you're actually sending over there. So it's a tighter, more fiscally responsible for the districts. It's a tighter business model that they use over there. We'll be bringing this up for approval next week. There really was not any red flags on the budget. Did you see any like that?
No, I think it's worth mentioning that the overall budget increase was very small.
Yes.
In some aspects more than others. But I'd also note, and I'll probably have this in my report next week, that requests for services and classrooms at the IU is growing. The number of, what do they call that again? Transfer of entities was 0 this year. That means no one pulled out of a program at all. And considering the way funding is going, the fact that more schools are relying on them, they have more students who need their services, I'm always impressed how they're able to control their budget. Very, very impressive. Anything else on that?
No.
If not, then that'll be on the consent agenda next week along with the Plan Con one. Mr. Johnson.
So with staffing shortages and challenges that way, I've looked at alternatives and ways we can accomplish some of the same things without that. So we've gone and demonstrated Turf Tank. We actually had them bring it to the site. We've gone to see it presented up at Anvil Cleona. We know F&M recently bought into getting one. Anvil Cleona has one. I know Donegal's looking at it. Slanco's looking at it. I think this is where a lot of school districts are going to, just because we're all in the same boat. There were some emails flying around recently about how's everybody staffed, and pretty much across the line, I think I maybe saw one or two that said fully staffed, but if they said fully staffed, there was a caveat that says because we're using high school students or something else, you know. So they're using part-times to make up a full-time and getting to the end result. But right now we have 2 grounds guys, and when I look at how much time they're spending, you know, and we're gonna get into the growing season here real quickly, the amount of fields we have now, to the time it takes to do a field, which you allot 2 guys, and if they're setting up a field right from the start, it's gonna take the better part of a day to get it square and correct, and especially you do a lacrosse field or something that has more lines to it, throw in a couple arcs, circles, the whole deal. This 25 minutes to do a lacrosse field, a ladies lacrosse field.
Wow.
Yeah. I was blown away when, and how straight the lines are, and if you want to do a youth soccer field or a full-size soccer field or something in between, it comes with a tablet. You pick the field you want and you tell it, yep, go, and off it goes.
Is this a robotic mower or something?
It's a robotic line striper.
Oh, it's a line striper.
Yep, it's a robotic line striper. It's, they do have robotic mowers out there. I'm not quite looking at those yet,
Yeah.
but that technology seems to be coming as well. Something about a mower and not being, I don't know, that looks like a lot of ways to go wrong.
Yeah, I've read up some of the ones for home use, and it's like, you can use it if you have a perfectly flat square lawn, that's it. It's no
Yeah.
obstruction.
Yeah, pretty much.
Board, I have to say, he gave me a link and I just realized sitting here that I put it on next week's agenda, not tonight,
okay.
so I
There-
apologize.
there-
It's on the 20th, yeah.
There is a
Consent
video link,
agenda.
I videoed
Yes.
it out here. We just did a small field, you know, box with a center line and a circle. It was pretty impressive when it was doing the box and the lines, but when it did the circle, I was blown away. I was-
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, and you see the things kind of bouncing and doing its own deal, but the line's straight.
That was me cute.
Yeah.
Does it have a name? Can you talk to it?
I think you can name it whatever you want. That's,
Okay. And that doesn't look like an awful flat,
it is not.
bumpy.
No, it's quite bumpy, but it doesn't seem to care. It straightens itself out and adjusts accordingly.
Oh my goodness.
So when it finishes this line, it's gonna come and do the circle then. So it holds about 5 gallons of paint. It actually uses less paint than if we tried to paint them, you know,
Does it stop
ourselves.
if it goes empty, or is it?
It alerts you, yeah, it's. I know this isn't as exciting as the step kids were
Kinda
doing
like
in here.
watching paint dry.
It is pretty much, yeah.
You should have set this to music.
Yeah, I'm not that, I should have pulled Joshua into the mix then, so we.
The trouble is, everybody's gonna be standing around watching it. Something else.
I think it's kind of like with our floor scrubbers, it loses its interest after a
Oh,
little
does it?
bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you did what I had asked you to do with the floor scrubber and put 2 giant googly eyes on the front of everything, that's robotic.
Yeah, but,
Just googly eyes.
Oh.
Like Marty at the
Oh, we're gonna
Giant.
name
yeah, Marty
this.
and Giant.
We should have a contest to name it.
There you go.
For him,
Yeah.
whichever.
Paint it, like R2D2 or something, I mean, you could do all kinds of cool things.
So this is a lease, I have money in the budget to cover it, for next year's budget, I put money in the budget to cover it, and we will going forward.
We're buying it for this year out of this year's budget?
That's
and
what
then
I'm looking at,
the,
yes. It's gonna take about 2 months to get one, and they actually don't bill us until
Yeah.
it's on site, so,
That's cool.
yeah.
And he'll do the
It'll,
youth soccer.
it'll do
fields,
any
right?
field you want it to
That's
do. It has like about 120 different fields already
pretty cool.
built into
That's
it.
pretty neat.
And you can tell it if like a football field, do you want the hash marks, do you want the numbers, do you want, it takes longer than if you were doing a whole football field. That's about a 2-hour run with all the numbers, everything. If you wanna do custom logos, if you wanna do
Custom
words, yeah,
logos, multicolored custom logos.
you could, yes. Yeah, so if we wanted to do something for cancer awareness, we could do a pink field and just have
But
fun
does
with
it
it,
just
yeah.
have the one paint reservoir, you'd have to switch it out?
It does,
colors?
it holds like 5 gallons in a reservoir, that's more than enough to do a field.
Even a football field with numbers in
The
it?
football field's gonna take the largest quantity of paint, yeah, I think like a soccer field was, about 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons of paint to do one. So a football field's probably gonna get pretty close to that 5 gallons. Yeah, the company gave me all kinds of data on this size field, this long, this amount of paint, you know. Obviously, that's gonna vary a little bit with how wide your stripe is, where you set the head, there's some adjustments you can make on it. It does.
I'm assuming Mr. Appleby would not be interested in having to take care of the computer on a robotic machine. But
Well-
this is available by lease only, right?
Well, that you can purchase, but then when you purchase,
You're responsible for it.
you're responsible for it. You don't get you're paying for the updates, you're paying
Yeah.
extra for the maintenance. So the lease includes actually 2 maintenance visits a year. It includes an extra pump, it includes $3,000 worth of paint per year. So there's a lot in that price that you get, and it's a locked-in price for the period of time. I think it's 6
Things
years.
get clogged up.
Yeah, when
all
we
that stuff.
consider the cost per hour and how many hours
And
it
that's
involves, I
what I look
imagine
at.
it's awfully close.
Yeah, and especially if it's taking 2 guys to get a field set up to begin with, you know, that's 2 guys that could be doing something else.
Yes.
You know, during that
Yes.
time, so, you know, say 5-10 minutes to get it set up, that guy can go off and mow or trim or do something else during that time.
Does that work on wet grass as well as?
Yeah, it seems like it doesn't matter what it is,
Okay.
it'll work on, I'm trying to figure out if it could stripe parking lots.
So I'm not usually impressed by technology, but this is.
Yeah,
This is one exception,
Yep.
it's amazing.
How would you move it from field to field then? Is it heavy?
It's not that heavy, but.
You just tell them where to drive and
That's what I
stuff.
say.
Yes, so the gentleman that brought it out for us to review, he had it in a back of a pickup with a ramp. So we have a trailer, we have ramps, so it could go right up into the trailer, you haul it out off to the other side of the campus and unload it, and
That easy.
it comes with its own base station, I'll call it. So it uses technology like excavators are using. So it's not using satellites or anything, so it talks to its own base station. So it's a lot of times with a satellite, you could lose signal or something could hiccup. This it's got definitely more
And how's it powered?
battery,
Battery,
and it comes with 3 batteries.
and you just recharge.
And they're just
it
rechargeable
After
batteries.
so many hours.
Yes. They said about 3 hours out of a charge. Yeah, so with 3 batteries, you can just keep swapping them and run it all day if we need to.
I'm impressed.
They'll put a Roomba anywhere now.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a big boy Roomba with a paint gun. So, all right, the
Okay,
consent agenda's
thank you.
fine, I don't
Well,
need
that'll
any
be
action
on the
tonight.
consent agenda.
Great, thank you very much.
The next big item is policy
And it is a
review.
big one. And I wanna-
I'm gonna start with 123, let's
Yep.
take care of that one first.
Yep.
I will tell you, what we did with 123, in addition to the time we spent coming to an agreement, is when we agreed to move forward, Mr. Dillman seemed to be the one with the most clarity as to what everyone at the table wanted. So I asked him to sort of be our weather vane and review it, and I wasn't going to bring it to the board until we had at least his opinion that this is what we all intended to have. And this is what he sent us. He made some changes to what administration had written, and we're accepting them as he recommended. So what you're looking at are his recommendations. So you argue with him if you don't mind. Are there any comments about this particular version of this policy? If not, I'm simply going to say it'll be on consent agenda next week. and thank Mr. Dillman for the time he spent getting it just right. That said, is the bigger issue.
Yep, it's bigger only in quantity.
That's what I said, bigger issue.
First, I wanna thank, Mr. Gillum, Mr. Gilman. How about Mr. Gensel?
Just put us together.
Put you guys together.
Yeah, it's fine.
Mr. Gensel for taking half a day and working with myself, our HR supervisor, and our CVEA rep, and looking at these policies. As you remember, we've had PSBA look at all the policies, redo them, send them to us, starting with the 300s, which are our 400s. So we've looked at all of them. This is what's called the administrative review. We've looked at it as a team, but now this first week, we have time to look at it before we go for first reading next week on consent. And then we have another month before we go to final. So there's a lot to look at, but I have attached a document that lists the changes. Kathy, you have it there? So the recommendation is to take a look at that first before you look at the policies, because you're gonna look at the policies and have a whole bunch of questions. Hopefully these answer the questions before you look at them. And that's how we went through ours. We looked at those first and then looked at each of the policies.
I agree with that, because I started looking at a policy and then went to this, and it made, as questions pop up in your mind, when you read them, you already understand why the change was made. And so if you read that first and then check with the policy where it's marked where those changes are, it goes much faster, it goes much clearer. A number of these are being retired. I still have a list of 5 or 6 general questions about it. I've shared some with Dr. Z. There was some terminology in their explanations that I wasn't sure I understood. But I think we can do that as we go through them. The idea is that our usual way of bringing it to you, and we talk about it at board meeting, would take forever. So what we're asking is for you to put in the time on your own and boil it down to just those few questions that you have, the ones that we're fine with or that we're retiring. And of all of those, when I went through my little what did you call it? sir?
Cross-reference?
The
cross-reference?
The cross-reference, yes. The cross-reference. Wherever it says retired, they tell you not just why, but which policy that information has been transferred to or already exists. That makes it much easier to accept the fact that we're not getting rid of the policy, we're just moving it. Now, if you really want, you can keep track and double check later, but you will come across the detail of that when we get to that policy. So I personally have no problem with retiring a policy and then finding out, when we get there. You can keep this, so as we get to any of those numbers, you can double check to make sure it says everything you would have expected. But this is the only way we're going to get through it. Okay, so we will put this on the action discussion agenda for next week, so we can ask, I think that makes the most sense, so you have time to ask whatever questions you have up to this point.
Can I just?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, are we keeping the 300s or are we keeping the 400s?
Our 400s are now gonna be 300s.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if I explained it to the board.
Yeah.
It used to be 300s, 400s, and 500s.
Yeah, the first column is what we used to call it.
Okay.
And the next column, if you look, is the new number. If you turn to the second page, like 302 is now 438.
The other way.
Other way.
Other way.
Whichever.
The 400s are now 300s.
Yeah, so you'll be able to follow that pretty easily. And what you'll see is the original wording with changes in it. So no matter what number you call it,
right,
it's the same review. Brad, you had a question?
Well, it was just a thank you. That represents a lot of work, so
yes.
thank you to all those who.
Well, and it's, now that we're signed up with PSBA, I mean, they have such a comprehensive review. So moving through that cheat sheet just saves so much time. You still have to, and based on the conversation we had, you still have to be, careful what you're seeing, but, it's funny how many they had listed as legal liabilities and stuff too, when you see the new language, you go, okay, I mean, it kind of makes sense, so.
That's
just
one of the
modernizing
terms I
it.
think we all need
Hey,
to
Dad.
understand, so it's
Yeah.
part of my list.
And Marilyn has an answer for that.
Yeah, I emailed you their response.
Oh,
Right before I
okay.
came into the meeting, I got a response back from PSB and I forwarded it to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I will share my list of questions and terms that I need explained, and then we can go forward maybe and share that even before the next meeting, so everybody's on the same page. You all okay with putting that on action discussion for next week? All of them?
Yeah.
If for some reason we can't get that far, we can always put a few of them off another month
You bet.
if necessary,
Right.
We're not gonna.
Second
We're just gonna
reading,
address the
right.
questions, correct?
Yeah, this
Excuse me?
Next, we're just gonna address people's questions.
Questions?
We're not gonna go through each one.
Only those you bring up that you
Yes.
want to discuss, and we'll
That's
do it
fine.
in chronological order,
That's fine.
folks, just so you understand, we're not gonna jump around.
Just say
And-
307, 308.
And all of those that we get through next week, next month, we'll also vote on making that the first reading.
That's fine.
And if there are a few adjustments, then it'll show up in second reading, and we'll work our way through this. The next group is the 00 group,
Right,
right?
and PSB is currently working on that, it's gonna be a couple months yet before we get that, and we'll need,
Yeah,
board members for that.
that was the original responsibility for Mr. Gensel. That is only how this board functions. I mean, it has what the rules in the school code, but also has a lot of choices that we make. And for that, he needs, I would say, probably 2 more review to bounce all of those changes off of. Because almost every line has something in it that we could make it 2 years or 1 year or change it however we'd like, so. Anyone willing to help him, we'd appreciate. If not, we'll come visit you one night and we'll convince you to help him.
Another question, when all is said and done, will all school districts have basically the same thing, or is there a lot
Only
of
if they
room?
participate in something like this.
Is there a lot of room for making it our own?
Oh, yes, anywhere where there isn't already a best practice, an accepted practice, or any of a number of state, federal, whatever rules and regs, you'll see everywhere where it's a choice.
a lot of the implementation though of it by the administrators, that's probably more personalized per district than, because the policy coming out of PSBA, you could punch up these policies in 3 different districts right now, the language is gonna be very, very similar.
Depends on the topic, it depends on what area of policy we're dealing with.
Right.
It's like with public participation. We're much more lenient about that than some of their recommendations, so every district will decide for themselves what those guidelines are. But the fact that we're allowed to have those guidelines will be all stated uniformly in every district.
And once you've done what you have here, we still have the second half of the 300s. So we'll bring that up after the second reading.
You had to tell them that now.
I mean, we're excited about it.
Yeah, I was going to spoon feed them that a piece at a time
No,
after we were done.
We're gonna keep going.
Yes, they saw how well the first half went, Okay,
Sorry, we're in the surprise.
that's okay, honest to a fault.
And Dave, there were a couple, I know when we had gone through them, and I was gonna act this at the second meeting, but they had to cancel the second one to accommodate my schedule. Where we were gonna check with the solicitor on that, just to make sure that was solid, that was all fine, I'm assuming, or.
Yeah, we haven't put these in yet, and I'm still working on
Okay,
that.
perfect, all right, cool, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, there are some that they recommend we either personalize or double check with our own
Yeah, just to have
solicitor.
them reviewed, just to
Yeah.
make sure, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we all good for that? Set aside some time between now and next Monday to go over these? Then that brings us to Mrs. Drager. Food services.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your time. The main reason I'm here this evening is hopefully to request board approval for a new point of sale system. And the main reason for the point of sale system is our current one is being phased out. They'll no longer support it. So we're hoping to get a new one, and what we're looking at is called Premier Edge. And we're actually already using, I say 3 components already, because it is actually the state system for our meal benefit applications. We're using it for what we call teamwork, and that's for all these staff who have to have their CEUs every year. We're already putting in it for that. And it also does our menu analysis. So we're actually already using it. We're just requesting now point of sale with it. So because of that,
I'm sorry,
between
are you
food,
saying we're using it, but we don't own the software? I'm not sure what you
well,
mean.
it's really free of charge. There's 3 components that we're currently using. The state
Oh, I
provides
see.
it because they wanted to capture as many free and reduced participants as we could.
Leading to our end up,
Right. So
Finding
now
the
we're
ways.
looking at hopefully getting into the Premier Edge for the point of sale system, but yes, that
the
we'd have
advantage is it will
to
have one
purchase.
system covering a number of uses.
Correct.
Got it.
So hopefully it'd be a lot nicer for the parents. Between us and technology, we actually had, things that we had taken a look at. We actually did a road trip. Myself and the managers went to Ephrata to look at the actual Premier Edge point of sale there, and the managers thought it was great. There's some things maybe that were a little bit, but there's other things that were really a lot better. Now, once you take something out of the point of sale, say you might have made a mistake 2 weeks ago, you have to literally go through and unclose every day to go back to those 2 weeks. Where a Premier Edge, you can just go right to that day and you can fix it. Plus, there's a lot of better things on my end for meal benefits and things like that it's going to be easier to get data for. But yes, between myself and technology, I want to thank Josh. He's done a lot of work, and I appreciate his help for technology, for everything here for Premier Edge. But it's a cloud-based system, and as I said, it works directly with state reporting, so that'll be a plus. And again, it's a single point access to review and make payments, so hopefully you can do other fees and things in there for the students. And it definitely will tie in with our new system we're getting as Power School. And the initial setup with training and support, as you can see, it'll be $6,765. And then thereafter, the annual subscription right now is $4,770.
Right now,
to
that's
purchase.
what it is.
Correct.
Yeah. Is this coming out of next year's budget or this year's? Somebody-
Well, if they're going to try and do it at the end of the school for the coming school year.
So it'll be in next year's
Yeah.
budget?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this much more than what we're paying for what we use now?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
No.
If it doesn't cost more and it works better, I'm all for it.
Mhm.
Any questions for Mrs. Drager?
Does that include purchasing new, because you said it's a point of sale system, does that mean in the cafeterias, is it like new monitors
New
and stuff as well?
terminals and things.
Yeah,
Well, we'll take a look at that. We'll probably, yes, have to purchase that.
I imagine that
Right,
would require
because-
equipment upgrade.
Yeah, they're pretty old, and I know Josh is great and has things on a cycle where we, replace things, so, but for the startup, yeah, we'd probably want to get some maybe new touch screens and things like that.
So don't we need to sort of nail that down before we complete the budget?
Not immediately, so we're gonna assess and evaluate, so like the current equipment will function.
Right.
Because we're going away from proprietary installed software to a web page.
Okay.
It's gonna function.
Okay,
So,
okay.
That makes sense.
I just didn't want to put a given amount in the budget and then find out, gee, we
not
need all
enough.
these cash registers or whatever. Okay, if there- no objection, that'll be on the consent agenda for next week.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Mann and Dr. Kozer. I'll let you introduce your own program.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. What we are going to talk to you tonight about is our Modern Learning Curriculum Project. As you may recall, a few weeks ago, we had talked to you about Understanding by Design, UBD terminology you may sound a little familiar with. But as part of our curriculum review process and that we need to follow, we're looking at this Modern Learning Project. It's taking the Understanding by Design and expanding that. It's almost like a refresh, so to speak. Our goal tonight is to just to give you that high-level overview We started a few weeks ago. This is to continue that and then answer questions that you may have next week based on the contracts that you'll have in front of you then. Okay, so tonight we're going to overview, high-level overview, talk a little bit about what the project is, and the various components involved in it.
How we doing there, Dr. Z?
Should I keep talking?
There we go. Now I was gonna say the slide, it's important to see the visual on the next slide here. So talking about curriculum, and we just wanna start by making this really clear distinction, kind of walk you through what the board's role is in the curriculum process and where our high-level plans are for this project. So when we talk about curriculum, oftentimes you get these two circles confused by people. There's curriculum, and then there are the instructional resources that we have in a classroom. So when we are talking about curriculum, when we're talking about the contracts we're going to bring to you, we're specifically referencing the state standards, how we take those state standards then and map them out across grade levels, across a course, so that we can pretty much guarantee that no matter what elementary school you go to, the students are going to have similar standards at a similar time of year. No matter what algebra teacher you have, the students are going to have similar standards in a similar sequence across the district. So curriculum is really the high-level framework. It's outlining the sequence of the topics. It's making sure that all of our standards are covered in the order that best makes sense for our students. On the other side of this Venn diagram are the instructional resources. This is where we talk about textbooks. So this would be the Stepping Stones resource, the Foundations at elementary, the Foundations phonics program that we use. IXL is a resource. Oftentimes you'll hear people say the textbook is the curriculum, and so we want to make that really clear distinction that the textbook is one of the resources that teachers use to make sure that we're hitting those standards. When we have a solid curriculum in place and we have the instructional resources lined up for teachers, that's where they get to do their magic. That's the center, that's the effective instruction. The teachers then get to decide how they teach that content, and that can be through many of the different instructional strategies that we outline in the CV instructional model. So we just want to start with that piece because it doesn't matter where you go, there's confusion around that term. So we wanted to clarify that first.
No, this work isn't done without guidance. There are school board policy, you just spent the last segment talking about the different policies and so forth. There are policies that we have to follow and that guide this whole process. And we listed most of them there. The three big ones, we look at curriculum development and review. So it kind of outlines what that looks like. You can see some of the key bullet points there. Review of parents and students. So what are the parents and students' role in this whole process? And then also finally, like adoption of course of study. So when it gets to that point when we bring that to the board, there's a process that you go through as far as adopting the course of study. Now down at the bottom there are other relevant policies that we didn't put up there, but for example, 102 is talking about academic standards that Jill just mentioned. 108 is the adoption of textbooks. All right, the process you have to go through to adopt a textbook, and it's clearly laid out. It's not that you have to follow. It just doesn't happen overnight. The things you have to do. Instructional resources is, as Jill was just talking about, is policy 110. How do you arrive at those and how do they get approved and so forth? And then 117 is the guidelines for planned courses. So those at the bottom there obviously fit into this big picture, but the three at the top are the ones that really guide this work that we're doing right here with the curriculum.
So we also thought it was important to just really share the why. Why are we engaging in this curriculum project right now at this moment? And you have heard us talk about our one-time opportunity with these ESSER funds to really strengthen the instructional infrastructure, we call it, within the district. Specifically, we've outlined our vision for the competencies to make sure that our students are ready for a 21st century world. So we know that profile of a CV learner requires a different set of skills than what any of us went through school focusing on. But to do that and to do that effectively and not just have it be a really nice graphic that
the robot painter will paint somewhere for us. But to do that effectively, those resources, the instructional resources and our curriculum need to match up to the profile. It's critical to really make sure that that profile of a CV learner in those 5 key areas are implemented consistently K-12. Also with that, we put up the screenshot here from the CV instructional model. So this is the roadmap. These are the steps that we've outlined to get us to 21st century modern learning. And in the area of relevant and rigorous learning experiences, that first line refers to the standards-based curriculum. And so as we did our data analysis post-COVID, as I did my listen and learns coming new into the district, as we've been meeting with our department chairs, we've really identified this as the starting point, that we need to refresh those K-12 curriculum documents, make sure they align not just to the content, the standards that we're teaching, but also to those competencies. And so to do that, as Don and I kept talking, we could have done a nice little K-5 thing here. We could have done a 9th grade science up here. But that's not how Don and I think, and that's not how we work, and that's really not what's best for an aligned instructional system. And so we started to look at this from a K-12 lens and talk about the connectivity and the alignment K-12, the competencies, and also the standards.
Which fits nicely, obviously, into our comprehensive plan when you talk about the profile of a CB learner and how that ties into this. So the slide that you have in front of you right now is, understanding by design. As we mentioned before, we've been using this framework for a number of years. We actually started probably back in 2007, 2011, which I know you can't see this, but we refined that for CV and what we want that to look like. And so understanding by design as a framework, if you're looking at that graph up here, you're looking at the left-hand side, so it says disciplinary. So you're looking at macro curriculum, you're looking at the content. So when you're writing a curriculum, whether it's Algebra 1 or US History 1 or whatever it is, you're working down through there and you're looking at these overreaching principles that belong to that, and then that's where you see that understandings and essential questions that go along to guiding that process. So the left-hand side is rooted in the standards, as far as, and then the curriculum that you would understand as the traditional curriculum. That's the left-hand side. So on your slide there, you can see where it says academic standards. So we look at the PA standards there. Just a special point of interest, the colorful one there in the middle is the STEEL. That's the new science standards. So it's science, technology, what do we make sure I got? Engineering, environmental, literacy, sustainability.
They keep
Steels.
changing that word.
Right. So that you'll start seeing that more, but so steels, and then so that part of it. On the other side is, as Jill just talked about, you're looking at the profile of a CB learner, the instructional model. We have this whole thing that's called the transdisciplinary side of it. What that means is these are transferable goals and skills that we want to see our young people take the content and transfer it. Be able to do that as well. In the past, we used an acronym, but it was called AMT, acquisition, meaning making, and transfer. This is getting very specific and saying, okay, here's what these transfer skills look like. Here's how we're going to put this in, and here's how these are interconnected to the profile of a CB learner. That 21st, that modern learning. It's not just learning in a vacuum, it's learning, but then applicable and transferable to life. So I think okay, go ahead.
Just for a minute, I wanted to make one observation. Back when we did the profiles, we had a lot of people put input in that. And what impresses me today is that we took that, built an action plan, and we're still able to build curriculum on what we said we wanted to do. I think that speaks very much to people that help develop that, both the people in the community and the people on staff. I don't think many places can say that they have all of their initiatives aligned that closely. And I'd also mention for the board that when you look at some of our district goals, you may find words like aligned with best practices and the big ideas, and those specifics are lost, or not lost, found somewhere deep in these documents. And it's hard for us to find because those documents are very long and very detailed. And to try to find just what are those big ideas and what are these best practices that have been identified. But it's nice to see them pop up every now and then. And if it's only one page out of the document, to show how completely aligned they are. I think that speaks well of direction we're going. And I'm sure it makes your life much more organized, having that.
It makes it clear for everyone, right?
Yeah, that put a smile on
Provides
your
clarity
face,
across
doesn't
the
it?
system, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for months.
It's just not as fractured as it was
Right.
years ago.
So to your point, Idette, this is an example of how these different aspects come together. And so I'll just walk you through this. It's a fifth grade example of what this curriculum would look like. What would the end of a unit assessment look like? So you have your social studies standards in here. We're looking at individuals participating in school and community activities. So there would have been some social studies, read alouds, lessons, interactions. Then for English language arts, we would have been focusing on opinion writing and teaching students just the technical pieces of what that means. We would include some speaking, listening, and viewing standards in here as well. But then for the profile focus, we would be really highlighting the global citizen and looking at the work that the Profile of a CV Learner Committee has done, using those descriptors at each grade level and working through global citizen with our students. So to pull this all together then, we would ask a fifth grader to find an idea after researching and pulling from different topics and maybe surveying their peers or putting a poll out there. They love doing that stuff. We would have them identify an idea that they believe would make the school better, write their opinion piece on that idea, keeping in mind their more global audience and taking into account what their disagreements might be and how can we account for that, and then presenting it. So either presenting at the PTO or having Dr. Graybill at Brownstown or Mrs. Strasburg at Fritz, the admin team at the school, sit and listen to that presentation. Again, it's an authentic task that hopefully some of those ideas would be integrated then into the school community. But it's a way to make both the content, the social studies, and the writing come alive with the profile competencies. That's what we mean when we say modern learning. In the past, it would have been those standards, right? And the social studies would have been its own block. Then the ELA would have been its own block. And we probably wouldn't have talked about the global citizen. In this modern learning approach, you're integrating as much of that content as you can in a meaningful way. You're bringing in those 21st century competencies from the profile, and then we're designing those assessments so that students actually have meaningful, authentic opportunities to show their learning.
So where does this live? So currently, we use a program called On Hand Schools at Insight. And so when we started writing our curriculum years ago, we used a curriculum warehouse. Before that, curriculum used to be written and the guides were put in binders and then stored somewhere that supposedly had access to, but they were stored, they were written, so that you could have access to them. But they were in the buildings and so forth. Now, obviously with technology, we can do that electronically, which makes it a lot more alive and viable because you can update things as you need to and keep it relevant. I think the challenge, though, of anything is, then that becomes your electronic binder somewhere, right? So you got to keep it in front of people and keep it moving. So where is this going to live? EduPlanet, and that'll be one of the contracts you'll see next week, is a company that we want to partner with, and they are actually aligned with Jay McKay, Understanding by Design. When we developed and started using On Hand Schools so many years ago, we created the framework inside there. So it's following it, but this is designed specifically for Understanding by Design. So you have that piece of it. So it's going to help manage the curriculum and guide the process. Another important piece is the public face of this. Easy access, well, I talk about easy access and revisions, but also the public face of this. So what will happen is as we develop the curriculum and put it out there, you'll have something on our website will look just like this. A parent could go anywhere on here, click on any of those tabs, and it will open up, all right, here's the Conestoga Valley Science Curriculum, stuff that we just talked about. Here's it down to the unit level. Here are the essential questions, core understandings, big ideas. Here are some of the resources that they're using. Here are those transdisciplinary components that go along with that. So, it'll just be that easy for community to have access to. So that's that public facing part of that. And as I said, this will replace Ed Insight on-hand schools for the curriculum management component.
So any parent who wants to know what kind of curriculum their child's going to get in a given topic at a given grade level, it'll be right there.
Yeah, just click on it, takes you right down to it. It's pretty, it's gonna take a little while for us to get it there.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's really it's pretty, out there, transparent, it just, there it is.
I have a question. A lot of this work was coordinated from the profile, from the wonderful work that was done on the comprehensive plan and so forth. We're facing a new comprehensive plan. Is that going to complicate this, or is the new comprehensive plan going to be along the same lines?
You can probably design it the way you want.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever school, I'm assuming it's a web-based cloud IT server type program where you can just design it how you want to do for your district. Or Manheim Township can design it how they want it for their district.
Well, my point is, you bring in a lot of people,
For the comprehensive plan.
staff and business community and parents
Right.
who might give us some all-new input.
Mhm.
Is it going to be a problem taking the last comprehensive plan and I
Updating
assume
it?
I didn't start from scratch because there was so
Right.
much
Right.
done in
Yeah.
its organization,
right.
just to be able to
That's right.
update
Yeah.
that
You got it.
without upsetting the apple cart and feel like we're starting everything all over
I think,
again.
I think it's
I
gonna
don't
be
see that.
an update, it's not gonna be a throwaway and redo.
Yeah,
Because as we go out and talk to different organizations, they're talking about the skills. When I was at High and they came to visit superintendent group, and they were talking about our kids need these skills
okay.
and the basic skills. And there's some content knowledge, but they can teach them the welding, how to weld. But it's how
Without
to
changing the
interact, and how to be a
curriculum.
problem solver and things like that.
Okay.
So I think I think the framework that was set up for that comprehensive plan,
Be
it'll
able to
stand the
keep
test of time.
Right.
I worry that ever since we got everything interrelated, what happens when one piece of it changes?
Probably gets updated in the repository.
It's-
I'm envisioning this as a repository of your plan,
That
of your
Correct.
curriculum.
Yes.
So when you update your curriculum, you just update your repository, and it's a living document, or a living
That's what I
software.
would prefer, so no matter what kind of input we might get, that might be a little different than before, it'll
Yeah.
all continue to fit in.
Right.
Well, but does all input really go into the strategy? Maybe yes, maybe no.
Correct.
But you look at
Correct.
themes that go into the,
Okay.
I'm done talking to you.
I would just
And
hate
you
to
got
see-
it. And if you think about the stages of the PBIS implementation that Sarah just took you through, the exploration, right? The initial, that our comp plan right now will get us through that initial phase. We'll have these documents ready. We'll have piloted some by the end of next year, which is already the end of that plan.
Wow.
But then when we talk about deep implementation, that's where the next plan would carry on. So we've done the initial pieces, we've explored different ideas, we've built this framework. Now it's going to be about really making sure that the
Right.
professional learning, the support is there, and we're monitoring our data to see what
Just
impact
so
it's
much effort
having.
went into getting everything coordinated.
Sure.
Correct.
They've said, I don't want to start and reinvent the wheel all
No,
over
not at
again.
all.
No,
And I don't want to lose what's good about the current system.
yeah, in our current comprehensive plan, we have those 4 key areas, right?
Yes.
Now, they may morph a little bit over time because there's new needs that come up, but it is, in my opinion, a very solid plan and, has a solid foundation.
And I'm
Will
assuming
keep us
that will
moving
make
forward.
comprehensive planning easier because you have a framework. You're always using that same framework.
Right. Now, the wild card with anything is PDE. You know, if they come out with some type of crazy thing, but no,
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
I think this will
Sorry.
increase your transparency.
It's on the public record.
This will increase your transparency.
Oh, I
In
think
terms
I think what we have now is transparent, but
Yeah,
this
that's right. I think
is
it's
the
full.
final piece for the community and for
Sure.
the parents to be involved, which
Yeah.
I think, it's always been hard to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah.
If you're interested, the school district we had a screenshot of, it's called Ramsey School District. It's in New Jersey. If you're interested, you can click on that page and see what's available.
Right.
It is really nice to look at what potentially ours could look like within a little bit more detail.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the who. So as Dr. Mann said, we're giving you the information tonight. We want to take questions, giving you a week to kind of think about this, because our next couple of slides, we're going to outline some contracts and some costs that come along with this work, right? So in that first column, you'll see in the as we get to the price tag, the consultants, we're going to need some consultants to help us with this work, several layers. One, we're working specifically with Jay McTighe. He is an international education leader. He actually conducted a Zoom with our admin team. He has, UBD is his design. This is what he came up with and has been training people across the globe on. So we actually have Jay McTighe serving as our initial consultant on this. He is helping us map out the process, the timeline, what's manageable without overwhelming the system, but yet keeping a nice pace because we don't want to delay on this. So we would have Jay McTighe, we would have two of his consultants who would be direct project managers for Conestoga Valley and would work with us on the actual daily curriculum writing. And then also we'd be working with the EduPlanet 21 staff on building out the software piece. As the teacher teams are writing the curriculum, one of them would be trained in that online software. And so some people might be in a Google Doc, but all the work they're doing is going to go right into the online learning platform. So we're not going to do double duty in a bunch of different organization systems.
Do you all recognize that name from our English language curriculum?
McTighe.
Yeah.
He absolutely has resources available in
So I remember when
understanding
you
by
brought us the
design
new
for
program, I
else.
thought, I recognized that name.
Yeah, he has been a leader in this field for decades. So we were actually really excited. We was really excited
As Dawn
to
said,
be
though,
on
we've
a
been using
Zoom.
Understanding by Design since 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
this is
remember
something
when
that
she
is
brought us in
ingrained
the
in
new
CV
English
culture.
language
Right.
curriculum. You said it had just come out and you mentioned, I was sure I recognized the name. I knew it was.
Yeah, his
Understanding by
concept and
design.
process is just very, very heavily used
Yeah.
across pretty much any content area or
Yeah.
domain, yeah.
You know, you see it a lot in the ASCD, for example, Grant Wiggins, who was his partner back in the day when developing all this.
Well, here's a silly question. If it's so great, why aren't we also using his other curriculum stuff?
Well, we've been
We
using
are.
this.
This is the
I mean,
update to it.
We just adopted a math program, right?
We adopted the textbook, now
Yeah.
we're gonna create the curriculum document up here.
okay. Oh,
We
that
actually went in reverse on that, you're spot on.
Yeah.
Normally you have the curriculum document and then you choose the textbook or the resource.
Right.
ESSER funding, and due to the fact that our math program was pre-Common Core standards,
Yeah.
we needed to accelerate choosing that textbook first. And now we'll create the high
Okay.
level, here are your essential questions, here are your assessments. That's
And
backwards,
It's
good catch.
possible it will be his unless something much better happens to show up. Is that
Right.
pretty much accurate?
Yeah. The other piece under the consultants, just to draw your attention to, and we'll get this on the price tag slide for you, but the other piece we are asking for is working with one of the IU13 educational services staff members. So this is a massive project that requires basically 13 groups in reading, 13 groups in math, making sure that all of those documents are in there once you get to Unit 1 and who's tracking Unit 2.
it can get very complex very quickly. And so we know that between the two of us, this is not a project that we're gonna have the capacity to take on, to see through to the level of excellence that we really see in the vision and the potential of this. And so we are gonna be asking to work with IU 13 out of their Ed Services team. They are actually, they were moving in this direction and training their team as we were exploring and moving in this direction. So it's a win-win for both organizations. Their consultant gets to be hands-on in a district. We get the project management support that runs through the ESSER funding. One-time opportunity, right, to really accelerate our learning system. And so we'll go over that contract with you in a couple of slides. Then again, you see our lead administrators who will be there to support teachers. Will be drawing from those department chairs, team leaders, our reading and math specialists, and then we would have those smaller curriculum writing teams. Again, built into ESSER funding right now to do those summer curriculum writing and extra pay for teachers who would like to be a part of that work. And then last but not least, as we said, we really want this to be an opportunity for our parents and community members to have a voice and to be at the table. So we would invite some of our parent representatives to be a part of those curriculum teams, really see how things are developed, listen in on those conversations. We'll be presenting regularly to the board on updates. And then again, because we had such a great turnout at the community open house and the academic forum, we would continue to do that as these units of study are being developed. Come on out, take a look at the resources, the read aloud books, whatever comes along with it, as we are developing and growing the curriculum project.
So the next slide is looking at when. Over the course of the spring, with our dialoguing with Jay McTighe, we've gone through a couple of revisions ourselves as far as the timeline of this and the initial scope of it. Back in the previous slide, I talked about policy, right? And policy 105 talks about a curriculum review cycle. And so back in the day, this was our curriculum review cycle that actually takes us out through 23, 24. But with COVID and all of the things that fell in between here, it disrupted this. So this is getting us back up to where we need to be. There's a lot of heavy lifting here in the early going because of some of those major breaks and some of those major areas that need to be updated. So here you'll see where we're going to start is with ELA and math over the summer, working on developing the curriculum in these units, and then going through you can see there different steps as we go through there, and bringing on different other content areas as we go through the course of next year. One of the things, it's a little different at the secondary level than at the elementary level. We have courses already written, like for example, U.S. History 1 is written, it's in on-hand schools following the UBD format. So when we used the expression earlier, refresh. So we're gonna take that and say, all right, there it is. We don't have to start from scratch. We can use that as a jumping off point in creating that. So the other departments like social studies, science and so forth, we'll be bringing them online over the course of the next couple of years, but we'll start in earnest in the fall and then next spring with those folks. And you can see then the same thing with the expressive arts and other elective areas. Originally, we were a little more aggressive with that timeline, but this seems to make the most sense as far as getting it up and running and making sure that we have everything in place so that when we bring everyone else online, that it's solid.
Question about secondary. So when it comes to classes that are sponsored by the universities, it's kind of like it's not really a resource, it's kind of their specific teaching instruction. Does that flow into the UBD design that will?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, in that, there's the framework that you follow, right? There is a rub there when you're working with the university. They're dictating some of the stuff.
Right.
And some universities are a little more flexible than others. For example, University of Pittsburgh has been pretty accommodating in working with our staff. And so they're taking their curriculum, their program, and then using our terminology, and they're not rewriting it, but they're using our terminology and putting it in there. The work for us really would be more on that transdisciplinary side of things. So how does this tie into the profile of a CB learner, because we don't want to let that go. I mean, that's an important component of what we're doing. Often, what you'll see happen is when we're teaching the courses here, students are getting exposed to a lot more than they would if they're sitting as hack getting it. Because when you think about the hours, I mean, so like up at the high school, we have a semester every day, 73-minute block. Well, at the college level, that's not what you're getting. You're getting it maybe every other day or whatever it is. So you're covering a lot more stuff. So I think the point there is that there's a rub. You know, we got to follow what they're saying since they're earning that credit. However, depending on the institution, will give us a degree of flexibility to work with them. And then we need to work on developing that transdisciplinary side. So we are applying the profile of the CB learner component.
Was the course that Sean Carley that we're working with, that was a college in the classroom,
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
for a practical example,
Good example.
Jill,
Great
Dawn, Mike, Sarah, a few of us have gone over for student presentations. And so it's almost like a Shark Tank. They come up and say, here's what I think school could be better. Here's an issue. And here's my research. And here's why I think it can be better. And here's the pushback I'm gonna get and how I'm gonna answer the pushback. So it's about a 8-minute presentation, and then we give them feedback. Not on the delivery style, but on the content of how you can make it better, or don't forget about this data. So it's a college in a classroom course, but the way Sean, who was our step coach, brought it up and did the project was real world project. But it incorporated the competencies of the profile and the content through the presentation. So it works that way, but it's a college in a classroom course through Pitt, I think. So again, a little more flexibility with Pitt.
This emphasizes an issue I've had for a long time. When they first started talking about kids skipping a high school course and taking the college level, I've always insisted they lost something by not having the high school class first. It's not just replacing one with one that goes faster or deeper. They're often two completely different courses. And when a student skips the high school course and goes right into the college course, they've lost something. And I think we have to be very careful about not just focusing on saving them some money on some college tuition or credits, but they're saving money, but they're getting less. I think we have to be careful, and I think this is a good chance to be able to go as deep as we need to in some of those courses, when we have more flexibility.
Right.
To make sure that it's, you don't give one thing up to get the other, that it's actually combined.
Right, and I think to all your points, if you remember back when we brought the course proposals to you back in December, or January, Sean's class, we've been adjusting this because the college is saying you can do X, Y, and Z, and we're saying, yeah, but we have time for this also.
Yes.
So we're combining that. So to your point, saying, all right, here's what we value here at CB, here's what we have to do for the university, so how do we bring these things together?
And university courses originally were created to build on what the child had in high school, not to be freestanding to begin with, so.
Yeah, but it also gives them a peek behind the curtain for when they leave the bubble and go to Pitt or go to Penn State, that it is a different environment of learning.
You're gonna have
than high
that culture
school.
shock no matter what you do.
You are, but I think it eases some of that transition, but that's just.
My concern is content.
Sure.
That a kid have all the basics he needs and
Yeah, I
doesn't hop, skip over certain things.
If I'm not
I think
mistaken,
that's
kids have to
important.
apply, correct? To take that college class,
The
they sign
college
up
and
for
the
it?
high school?
There's a screening process, right?
There's a screening process
We've done that
to
everyone
qualify,
to
right.
qualify.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
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 But
So,
the college and the high school is that really sweet spot where
Right.
you're
it is.
with your high school teacher that you know and you trust, and you're getting that college level rigor and content, but you get a little bit extra scaffolding and support because it's
Yeah.
here in the environment where you're comfortable and you know the people are gonna have your
Yeah.
back in that course.
Yeah, back when Governor Rendell actually brought out the whole dual enrollment component of it, there was that replacement emphasis back then. You know, when you think about the No Child Left Behind and I'm drawing a blank, there was another component of that. But under that,
Before my
when
time.
oh, sorry. So when Rendell had that out, we had to line it up and say, all right, this is actually replacing that. while students, can take Sean's class as a senior satisfaction of a requirement, it's not necessarily saying, all right, it's actually replacing it, you know what I mean? So with that change in the shift of what was required from way back then to what's required now, we have some more, it's, in my opinion, a lot better.
But we at one time had I guess it's a project constantly changing where a student could go to Millersville or Effingham during the school day, they could make it, take the course instead of their high school course. And I often thought, they're losing something in there.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, but we had, my daughter did it, and I didn't think it was a good idea. But it depends what class they're taking, granted.
Yeah.
Okay, next. We're gonna get to the money part of this.
It's coming.
Aren't we? Yeah.
It's Dr. Mann's slide. So the school board's role, just so you know what to expect over these next couple of years here. Specifically, your role is to approve the planned instruction, which is the curriculum. Again, this is coming out of school code. It's from the academic standards. We're gonna stick to those PA core standards as closely as we can, but we will bring those curriculum documents, those courses of study for you. You would approve those then before they're officially implemented in classrooms. Also, coming back to those policies that we showed in the first slide, that's a really important role of the board, is making sure that our policies reflect the processes and procedures that we want to have in place here in CV, so they continue to be revisited based on our own ongoing policy cycle. And then that last piece is really important, and we've started this conversation in looking at our data this fall. After we get these the curriculum units of study up and running and in classrooms, this is where we do the data check with you. We say, hey, look at what we saw. The math scores were here in 2022, implementing stepping stones, plus this curriculum document with the essential questions and the assessments. Look where we are now. So that's a big part of the board's role, is really holding the rest of the system accountable and saying, are we seeing the achievement and the growth from our students that we would expect based on having this consistent curriculum?
Right.
Here's your price tag.
Here you go. So as far as the proposal and looking at the contracts you'll see for next week, we have the one with Jay McTighe. We're still working with him, so we don't have a dollar figure for that yet. So that's still to come. That may or may not be next week.
That will be the big price tag, though. We'll warn you there. That one will be the sticker shock, because we're working with the national level consultants on this. We're getting the best of the best right from the company. Everything is ESSER.
Right, all this is ESSER funded, which again, without that, this would not be a possibility, or at least not to this magnitude.
Would you say that will be the big number, 6 figures?
Yes, I would anticipate over the course of 18 months of this project, potentially.
It's just a one-time thing.
One time, very similar to PBIS. Invest it, get it moving, and then work the consultants out of their job.
Yeah.
And now we are doing the annual review. It's the one-time big heavy lift to get everything where it needs to be.
Well, the expenses that you do mention that ESSER is covering, those are not recurring expenses?
Correct. The EduPlanet 21 there, Mrs. Grove, if you see, I have ESSER for 23-24. That will be an ongoing reoccurring cost. It won't be that dollar amount. It's expensive in year one because you always have the initial implementation fees, but it will be replacing the on-hand schools at Insight. So we may end up with maybe $5,000 to $7,000 increase in annual costs moving forward then.
For a more robust program that's community facing.
Yep.
For a project this size, why do you need the owner of the company?
We don't. He actually wants to be involved with our district. So
Is he local-ish? Is he?
Maryland.
Maryland, okay.
Yeah, Jay McTighe actually has kind of usually worked with one of the consultants, He stated to Don and I on our last Zoom, he said, you know, he's really excited about the project here, that CV has the right conditions, the right leadership, the right plan here to really implement this project well with a high level of success. And so that's actually how we're getting his time and attention right now, because we've created the conditions to really make this a true implementation of the framework.
Yeah. And I'll admit, it is exciting to talk to this guy. As we know his book.
I mean, you look at it, we've been following Understanding by Design for over 15 years. And the gentleman that created that is saying, I wanna work with you. And we've been doing this for 15 years, and now, because he wants to upgrade his approach, and we're the district, one of the districts he's gonna work with. It's, as an educator, yeah, we geek out a little bit about this stuff, but it's really pretty cool. That's what it's all about, is teaching and learning, and when we can learn from one of the best.
And he's not gonna go somewhere that he hasn't seen doing it well.
Correct,
Right.
correct,
That's right.
that's a feather in our cap. And that's from 15 years of a feather in the cap.
Before we move forward, we have Mr. Benigno on here. Do you have any questions, Phil?
No, ma'am, I'm just attentively listening to everything, but thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, okay.
Thank you.
Then we'll just hold our breath till we see that final figure.
That's right. So next week, you will have the IU contract for approval and the EduPlanet 21 for approval. And actually, the IU is split into two contracts. It's one from now till the end of this June 30th year, and then there's one for next school year as well. So it'll be 3 actual documents that we'll have on the consent agenda. So, you know, if you have any questions, we're planning to put this on as another discussion time, just to make sure before we ask for the vote,
Okay.
that you can follow up with questions. Yeah.
Glad to do that.
Just
Any other
with
questions?
the timeline, so if there's 2 for the IU, will the EduPlanet, will it go from now until the end of next year?
It goes all the way through, is this a 3-year, Don? I will check, I will check and get back to you, yeah. It's a 3-year, but we can only fund it with ESSER through September of 2024. That's what has am I on it?
What I'm
Yes.
saying, they don't need the separate one for the rest of this year and then.
No, they're working with us. Yeah, no, good question. No, they're working with us to say, all right, we'll get you access and we'll get things up and rolling.
Yeah, I guess I'll wait till I see the contract, but the IU contract, do you have a feel or do they spell out how much time they anticipate that person spending on the project?
Yes, so we have asked for 20% of this person's time. So 1 day a week, to make sure that that is dedicated CV time just for this project management.
So it's 18 months, right?
It would be April 1 to September 30, 2024.
Is that roughly 18 months?
14, 15, 16, 17, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I'm just doing the math in my head, so that's roughly 40 grand a year, right? For 20% of their time.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
expensive.
Check out the contract, it'll give you the
Okay.
per diem and it's the standard rate that they charge for their per diem based on the number of days.
Yeah, that's per their business model, so it's not like we're just taking a teacher's salary and doing 20%. There's a markup for everything that comes out of the IU.
Yeah.
Similar to the PIMS contract that we did, you know, the way it's set up.
And the
Similar
HR support, yes.
Right, HR support, right.
Yeah.
Alright, the last thing I wanted to
in
do
that
was give
March
kudos to
20
that,
draft. It's already in there.
the public face of that. I like that a lot. I think that's cool. I think parents will receive that well. I will check out that Ramsey School District, and so the only caveat I would say is if we're gonna do that, make sure it looks good. And if there's a way to put links, cause I know like some of the new resources we bring in, like stepping stones and some of those other ones, and we'll eventually do with an ELA program, a lot of them are gonna have their own type of public face as well, so being able to link things through this, like if we're gonna do it, I'd say we put the time in to really take it to where parents can really go and really get in, and not just mention something without a way to say, well, I
what
see
is
that,
it?
but what is it, you
Right.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that would just be my personal recommendation, but I love that design, I think that's great.
Yeah,
It's important.
yeah, definitely check it out. They did a nice job.
Yeah, I will.
Anything else? If not, then it'll be on the action discussion agenda next week.
Next week.
Okay?
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. IU Board Representative, I'm currently the board rep on that. I have to be reelected every so many years. Is there someone just dying to take over for me? That'll be in the consent agenda next week.
I can't think of anyone better.
As long as it isn't you,
No,
I'm
it's not
sure you
me.
can. I'm
No,
sure
it's
you
fine,
can.
it's a good role.
Okay, Mr. Appleby.
So, we were wowed by robots and food service and curriculum. I'm gonna talk about how we actually make everything work. That's the internet of things. So what we have tonight is an agreement with IU13 that is going to hook up our 3 outstanding elementaries and service building. So in February, I talked about E-rate. People asked about the 80%. This is the category 1 side. So this would be the connectivity services. We've been talking with IU13, trying to lock it in. Long story short, we're hoping to have it sooner, but we got it in. They're gonna kind of hold us in limbo and be prepared to rock and roll. But we are looking to switch over to utilizing them for our WAN. So for the last 5 years, we've been using Comcast, 1 gig connection, routed multiple locations, all comes back to high school. Take that, add a couple thousand devices, we kind of hit a threshold point. So by going through the IU, a couple things are gonna change. We're actually gonna lease dark fiber, so we're gonna light it ourselves, lighting dark fiber. We're not gonna use Comcast to route, it's gonna be their fiber. But we actually, for all intents and purposes, we own it for 10 years. We can send however much traffic down it we want. In the onset with the IU13, we're gonna do 10 gig connections. So that'll be a significant improvement over the 1 gig, so it's 10 times what they already have. Because it's dark, we could always up that if we had to. So in the course of the next 10 years, if I need to go 20, 40, 80, it's just a investment on the optics. And I'll tell you, in my world, these are the tiniest, most expensive things on the planet. But that's what allows the fiber to go faster for communication. We have that flexibility of doing that. The other benefit of going through the IU is everything's gonna route back to them, which in a sense it already does. So our Comcast WAN, everything comes back here to the high school, and then everything goes across our 10 gigs back to the IU. All 4 of those locations are gonna go directly back to the IU. All internal traffic routes back to us. All internet goes straight out. So we're actually gaining for the high school and the middle school and future Smoketown additional bandwidth going back because we're offloading all those other locations. So kind of want to strike while the iron's hot. So you also notice there's some build out costs related to the fiber. Ms. Kapka asked about spending more of that 80% discount. So it's kind of what we're doing. Regardless of what our E-rate number comes up next year, if we go with the agreement with the IU this year, we get 80% on the build out costs over the course of the next 4 years. Why? Is because USAC writes a big fat check to Comcast and says, here's your 80%. They can only bill us the 20, and they break that up over 4 years, which makes the cost very attainable. So right now we budget about $81,000 for the Comcast WAN, but that's before E-rate. So we usually spend about $40,000. By the time, even with the build out costs, we're actually going to be under that annually to the IU at a higher speed. So a little bit of cost savings, a lot more faster internet, things of that nature. So thankfully, contract negotiations with Comcast, it is their fiber that they're gonna lease us. So when I called my rep, he's like, oh, no problem. We'll go month to month till this is actually built out. So projection is E-rate approval, everything else, we may be looking at December, January timeframe, all things considered. And that they'll be able to light up the dark fiber. Comcast will maintain our current connection until then. And then I call them up and say, hey, we got 30-day notice, we're gonna be lit, turn it off. IU's got all their stuff. I am also gonna probably bring next month a 2-year contract with Comcast strictly for Smoketown. I haven't forgot about Smoketown. But in its, indeterminate future, we do need to maintain its connection. So there'll be some incurred costs as well. Nice thing is, since 5 years ago, speeds have gone up, prices have come down. That's the technology. It's the only thing that ever seems to actually change. So, any questions?
So this is next year's budget.
Well, yes, so it's technically starts July 1. So it's all pending E-rate. It's on the consortium. So if you know anything about
Expenses next year.
yes, so all expenses start with next year. Yes, but it's pending E-rate, so I gotta make sure that's important. So
Any questions? But this is an approval issue.
It's a what?
Approval.
Yes, that's fine.
yes.
So the ROI kind of kicks in year 5 then?
Well, yeah, year
More or less.
4 actually,
Okay.
because we've got it'll
That's
be a
when we
first
get
year
the under, as
implementation.
you mentioned.
Yeah, first year is always the most because of the equipment costs, and then it drops into the build outs, strictly the build outs in the E-rate. But again, that's locked at 80%, and then, yeah, by year 5, halfway into the 10-year. Nice thing is, once we have it all established, if we get to 10 years and we're like, yep, gonna go another 10 years, it's whatever the rate is. We have no build out costs. We're already locked on the fiber. So, yeah. 20 years out, who knows what internet speeds are, but.
These rates are locked in, even though they're 4 or 5 years away.
So the build out costs will be locked. The E-rate WAN will adjust each year based on our percentage. So if we have 80% next year, it'll be 20%, but it's, but that's no different than the 5-year contract with Comcast, because when I started, 2 years into that contract, we were 60%. And then I punched the numbers the day I got here, I lost 10%, and I'm surprised I still got to work here, but, yeah, so that's contingent on E-rate, so.
Any questions? If not, I'll be waiting for a motion to approve the contract.
Okay, and then you'll just sign it, I'll get it tomorrow.
Would you like a motion now?
I haven't heard a second or a vote yet.
Well,
Don't be
yes.
in such a rush.
I gotta have my
You move for the contract? or
I
you
will
need-
take a motion.
I move that we approve the contract.
Second.
I'm sorry, who
Roll
was
call,
second?
please.
Mr. Gensel?
Aye.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mrs. Kapka?
Aye.
Mr. Tally?
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge?
Aye.
Mrs. Groff?
Aye, yes,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Our last action item tonight, I'm pleased to present to the board the final contract for Mrs. Hunsinger to become our permanent Chief Financial and Operations Officer. Is there any discussion? If not, may I have a motion?
I move that we approve the CFOO contract for Ms. Hunsinger.
Second.
We have roll call, please.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mrs. Kapka?
Aye.
Mr. Tally?
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge?
Aye.
Mr. Gensel?
Aye.
Mrs. Groff?
Aye.
I just
That
wanna say-
passes unanimously.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you all very, very much for your support and for this opportunity. It's going to be a fun adventure.
I'm glad you find this fun.
Well, they get excited about curriculum. So one thing I've always said for all the years I've been here, and my husband reminded me of this the other day. He said, when you walk out, whether you're having a rough day, stressful day, even a good day, at the end of the day, it's always about the kids. And there's nothing more rewarding than seeing them outside, practicing their, track or cross-country football, or going into the classrooms, or seeing the little ones get off the bus at the elementary. So my heart's with CV, so really, I thank you very much.
It's our pleasure, I assure you.
Thank you.
The agenda for next week, the tentative agenda is posted. Any concerns? It's the second time there's an opportunity for the public if they'd like to address us on any issue. Would they? Nope, okay. Board matters, are there any initiatives or announcements anyone would like to propose? If not, I'll take a motion to move to executive session for legal and personnel reasons.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed or abstentions, we are adjourned.